you know, I never bring a book to bookstores, you know, because when I first started writing, I brought a book once, and they didn't have any books, but they still wanted me to read. They were selling my book, but they wanted me to. They weren't selling my book because they didn't have it, but they wanted the audience in there so they would buy other books, I guess. And I realized that, well, if I didn't bring my own book, I couldn't have read. I said, well, I'm sorry, you don't have a book. And it's happened a couple of times. I said, we don't have any book, but, you know, can you still read? And I said, well, you don't have a book, what do you expect me to read? She said, you don't bring your own book? You know? Some people, though, you know, like you do that thing where people go, they, you know, like you go to a place and they say, well, did you bring you know, a couple of boxes of your books? Which, you know, it is true. Some people do that. And you do it in, like, maybe in the beginning, but I never do. You know, I said, well, how do you expect us to buy books? I said, I don't know, but I'm not, you know. So I have this new book. It's an interesting. I mean, getting to this book has been an interesting process for me because about a couple of years ago, I decided that I was going to spend a while concentrating on doing film, and doing that kind of stuff. And so I wasn't writing, but you know, you're kind of empty when you're not writing fiction, you know, because working on screenplays and stuff like that, especially on television stuff, it's kind of it's plot driven. You know, and it's like, I mean, people might think of mystery as plot-driven, but God, on television, like every moment, well, why did he do this? Well, why did he do that? Well, why did she do this? Why did they go there? And it's driving me crazy. So I wrote this book without anybody buying it, you know, and then I finally sold it. Then there's a whole story there that I'm not supposed to tell you, so I won't, you know. But, so, you know, so it was interesting, but the reason I wrote this book doesn't occur in the beginning of the book. The reason I wrote the book occurs, you know, more toward the middle and the end. But I like reading the beginning because I'm introducing a character that you guys don't know and, you know, stuff like that. So I'm going to read the first 4 or 5 pages, maybe 5.5, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about why I wrote the book, and then, you know, you can ask me questions. You know, and I must have told you here before that when When I read, I never read very long, unless I'm in Sweden or Germany, where they really like it for you to read for 2 hours. It's true, they do. They love it, and you know, and then you know, and they just stare at you. And when it's over, if you ask, you know, like you say, any questions? They have no questions, none whatsoever. They just listen, and then they all buy the book. You know, in America, if you read, you know, anywhere over like 15 minutes. And you ask them, so you going to buy the book? Someone, no, man, I felt like you read me the whole damn book. I'm not going to do that, you know. So I read short, and then you know, and then after that, I'll tell you why I wrote the book, which, you know, is a little different. And it's funny, I had to hire an extra publicist because my political reasons for writing the book. It's not like my publisher doesn't care, and it's not like they don't know, but it's kind of like they can't really talk about it. And I don't know what that's. I do know what it's about, but and some people in this room know what it's about. But so anyway, so I'm going to read this from the beginning. So there was nothing happened before this because it's the beginning. You know. Looking out from my second floor window onto Montague Street is better than the third floor view. From here, you can make out the lines and the faces of the hundreds of working people moving past. People who more and more have no reason to walk through the doors of the fancy shops and banks that have made their claim on that thoroughfare. These new businesses are like modern-day prospectors panning for gentrified golden customers who will buy the $1 million condos and fancy clothes, eat in the French bistros, and buy wine for $100 a bottle. When I took this office almost 11 years ago now, there were used bookstores, second-hand clothes shops, and enough fast food to feed that displaced army of workers in Brooklyn Heights. That's when Christoph Hale offered me a 20-year renewable lease because another cop, Gladstone Palmer, had overlooked his son Leif Hale's involvement in the brutal attack on a woman whose only offense was to say no. 3 years later, Leif went to prison for another beating, one that got bargained down to manslaughter. But this had nothing to do with me. I had the lease by then. My maternal grandmother always tells me that every man gets what he deserves. 13 years earlier, I was a cop too. I would have tried to put Leif in prison for the first assault, but that's just me. Not everyone sees the rules the same. The law is a flexible thing on both sides of the line, influenced by circumstance, character, and of course, wealth or lack of same. My particular problem with women was, at one time, my desire for them. It didn't take but a smile and a wink from me, Detective First Class Joe King Oliver, to walk away from my duties and promises, vows, and common sense for something, or just a promise of something that was as transient as a stiff breeze, a good beer, or a street that couldn't maintain its population. For the last 13 years, I have been somewhat less influenced by my sexual drives. I still appreciate the opposite, sometimes known as the fairer sex, but the last time I acted on instinct, I ran into so much trouble that I believed that I was pretty much cured of my roaming way. Her name was Nathalie Malcolm. She was a modern-day Tallulah Bankhead with the husky voice, quick wit, and that certain something that defined the long-ago starlet. My dispatcher, the same Sergeant Gladstone Palmer, called via cell phone to give me the assignment. Should be easy, Joe, Palmer assured me. It's basically a favor for the Chief of D's. But I'm on that port side thing, Glad. Little Exeter always makes his move on Wednesdays. That means he'll be doing it next Wednesday and the one after that, my sergeant reasoned. Gladstone and I had come through the academy together. He was white Irish and I was a deep shade of brown, but that didn't affect our friendship. I'm close, Glad, I said, real close. That may very well be. But Bennett's in the hospital bed with a punctured lung, and Brewster messes up 2 out of every 5 columns. You need a point or 2 on your sheet this year anyway. You spend so much time at the docks, you don't make half the arrests you need to keep your numbers up to snuff. He was right. The one place the law was not flexible was in statistics. Criminal arrests and convictions, the retrieval of stolen property, and competent investigation that leads to crime solution where what our professional careers hinged on. I had a big case in front of me, but it might be a year before I could wrap it up. What's the offense, I asked. GTA? Just one cop for a chop shop? Nathalie Malcolm. Stole a Benz from Tremont Bendix of the Upper East Side. A woman car thief? Order came from up top. I guess Bendix got friends. It's just a single woman lives alone in Park Slope. They say the car is parked in front of the brownstone. All you have to do is ring the bell and slap on some cuffs. You got paper on her? It'll be waiting for you at the station. And King? What? Glad only used my middle name when he wanted to make a point. Don't mess it up. I'll send you a text with all the details. The purple Benz was parked in front of her place. It had the right plates. I looked at the front door, flanked by full-length windows that were swathed in yellow curtains. I remember thinking that was the easiest arrest I'd ever been sent on. Yes, she said, opening the door maybe a minute after I rang. Her tan eyes seemed to be staring through a fog at me. She had red hair and the rest pure Tallulah. My grandmother likes old movies. When I visit her in the lower Manhattan retirement home, we watch old love stories and comedies on TCM. Ms. Malcolm, I said. Yes? I'm Detective Oliver. I have a warrant for your arrest. Your what? I took out the leather fold with my shield and ID. These I showed her. She looked, but I'm not sure she registered anything. Tremont Bendix claims that you stole his car. Oh, she sighed and shook her head slightly. Come in, Detective. Come in. I could have grabbed her right there, put on the restraints while reciting her rights as the Supreme Court detailed them, but this was a soft arrest, and the lady was feeling tender, vulnerable. Anyway, little Exeter Barrett had already connected with the captain of the Sea Frog. The shipment of heroin wouldn't be in for a few more days. I was a good cop. The kind of officer who had yards of patience and lost his temper only when threatened physically by some suspect, and even then, I took no joy in beating him after he'd been subdued and restrained. Would you like some water? Nathalie Malcolm asked. The good stuff's all been packed away. The living room was filled with boxes, bulging duffel bags, and piles of books and electronic equipment, along with clusters of potted plants. "What's going on here?" I asked, as if reciting a line that had been written for me. "This is what Tree calls me stealing his car." She was wearing a sheer and shimmery green housecoat with nothing underneath. I hadn't paid close attention at first. When I got there, I was still intent on the job. I don't understand," I said. "For the past 3 years, he's paid my rent and left me the Benz to use as my car," she said. Her tan eyes had turned golden under the electric light. "Then his wife threatened to divorce him, and he told me to get out and bring his car back to his uptown garage." "I see. I have to move. Detective, what's your name again?" "Joe." When Nathalie smiled and shifted her shoulders, the structure of our temporary relationship changed from potential handcuffs to definite bed sheets. Nathalie was very good in bed. She knew how to kiss, and that's the most important thing to me. I need to be kissed and kissed a lot. She intuited this necessity, and we spent the better part of that afternoon and way into the evening discovering new and exciting ways and places to kiss. She was a victim. I could see that in her eyes, hear it in her deep voice. And the arrest warrant was wrong. A man leaving his car at a girlfriend's house, a house he paid the rent on, had no expectation of her returning that automobile to his garage. The next morning, I'd make my report and get back to the docks where the real crime was happening. When I opened my eyes, Monica Lars, my wife at that time, was already awake and making breakfast for her and Asia Denise, our 6-year-old daughter. I awoke to the smell of coffee and the memory of Nathalie kissing my spine in a place I could not reach. I'd left her when my shift was over. I showered and changed at the station and got home in time for late supper. Drowsing for the last time in my morning bed, I took in a deep, satisfied breath, and then the doorbell rang. The bedroom of our Queens home was on the 2nd floor, and I wasn't due to work until afternoon. I was naked and very tired. Anyway, Monica knew how to answer a door. I stretched a bit, thinking how much I loved my little family, and that a promotion to captain was not an impossibility once I single-handedly busted the largest heroin ring ever to exist within the borders of the greatest city on earth. "Joe!" Monica yelled from the entrance hall, which was downstairs and all the way to the front of the house. "What?" I bellowed. "It's the police." The one thing a cop's wife never says is, "It's the police." That's what criminals and victims of criminals say. Sometimes we said it ourselves when pointing a service revolver at the back of some perp's head. The mayor called us the police, and now and then the newspapers did, but a cop's wife saying, "It's the police," would be like my black-skinned grandmother calling out to my ex-sharecropper grandfather that it's some Negroes at the door. I knew there was something wrong, and that Monica was trying to warn me. I had no idea that it would be her last loving act in our marriage, or that her call heralded the end of any kind of normal life I could expect. So anyway, so I wrote this book. I'd been thinking for a long time about people, like Mumia in Philadelphia, Eddie Conway in Baltimore, black men, some women too. I met a couple in Cuba when I was there, who, the police are kind of after them, and when you live in the hood, it's a different thing, because if you don't live in the hood, you're really not afraid of the police, It's, that Crosby, Stills, and Nash songs, it's like looking in your mirror and seeing a police car. Well, the hippies were saying that because they were smoking dope. Black people were saying that because they're black people, And it's like it's a big problem, The police, they jump on you, they beat you, they do all kinds of things, and there's really nothing you can say. And if you become an activist and you are acting against the police, then the police are really on you. They said, well, maybe we should shoot this Negro here, though they don't say Negro. But now, I wanted to write about that. I wanted to write about a character who, one, is a policeman, a black policeman, but still a policeman, and another black character who definitely killed 2 policemen, but is innocent of murder. It was self-defense. And this guy is going to be on death row, and my character is going to be over here, and he's going to have a problem too, with Nathaniel Malcolm. And so, like he has to prove his innocence, and even though he doesn't want to prove this guy's innocence, he takes the case, and after a while, he proves to himself that the guy had to be innocent, that there's enough of an issue, and so. Once he finds out that this guy is innocent, then he has to step out of the box. And the whole thing is about stepping out of the box. Because a lot of us know things are wrong, and we don't do anything about it, right? I mean, it makes sense, if you're trying to feed your family and keep your job and not be in prison yourself. You keep quiet, because if you talk, the talking is going to lead you out of the box. My character is going to take a step out of the box. And so that's why I wrote the book. And I'm very happy with it, actually. So that's it. Any thoughts, ideas, minor criticisms? Yes.
When did you begin this book?
Oh, I don't know. Like a year ago, a little bit more maybe. Yeah.
Was it any particular incident that made you want to write this?
No. I was just, I've been thinking about it, forever. I've been thinking, like saying, I'd like to say something about this, and it just turned out that I had time to write, and that was the thought that was in my head at the time. So I said, I'll do that. Yes.
Have you, well, I know you have, being a black man, been in those situations? I mean, I myself, people, we have a lot of conversations about things that are going on now. People say, well, aren't things better? It's like, okay, better than what? I'm not sure. But, have you been put in a situation where you're innocent, you haven't done anything, but you're kind of up against it and have to defend yourself?
When you say defend myself, what do you mean?
Well, for example, I've gotten 5 traffic tickets in my lifetime, but I've been pulled over 100 times. So, I'm automatically on the defensive when I'm thinking, what did I do wrong, when I don't think I did anything wrong.
What the great thing is, though, like when you're sitting in a car next to like a mature, that means 30 years old or older white woman, and the policeman stops her, and she says, "What the hell have you stopped me for? I wasn't doing it." And he just said, "But ma'am, you have to listen." And you think, God, if I said that, I'd be dead. If I like expressed that much anger, I thought he was armed. The way he was talking, I was pretty sure he was armed. But that's the thing. I've had lots of policemen pull guns on me in L.A. And it's just like you're just sitting there saying, well, and you get more and more calm. Like that's the thing. The thing is, you have the opposite reaction that you think would be natural. You say, yes, officer. Oh, no, officer. I was just walking down the street. It's like, because that's what you're doing. I was just driving this car. But yes. There was somebody over there? Yes.
Yes. I was surprised to see you had started a new book with a new character. I was expecting another Leonid McGill. What made you to tell the story of a contemporary character like Leonid is? What made you want to tell the story from a new character instead of using a character you already had? What made you?
I actually don't have an answer for that question. I just started writing, and it was this guy. Who's very different from most of my other characters. Most of my other characters from the other side of the line, right? This guy's actually, he's actually more honest than the New York Police Department, which is why he's in so much trouble. He's like completely committed, except when it comes to women, to doing what's right. And even with them, he's not going to beat them, but he's going to. Anyway, yes.
First of all, I want to thank you for all that you've written.
Yes.
Your book, and someone's talking about the jazz of Miles Davis, and I had already said that I consider writer, you know, I just didn't have the money to print it, had to print it. Everything you write stimulates my mind in one form or another. You know, whether it's science fiction, whether it's, I definitely love The Last Days of Plotney Gray. You know, I love how you bring the young woman to the older man who seems to be senile for all intents and purposes. I don't know, maybe because I'm aging, you know. It has something to do with it, you know.
But you know, I mean, the thing is that I mean, one of the things about writing about somebody with dementia, you know, everybody experiences somebody. If you live long enough, you'll experience it. And if you don't, you have people in your family who were, you know, like you said, well, you got to go over and take care of your Aunt Edna because you know she keeps forgetting where the refrigerator is and stops eating, you know. And so you have to go. You have to kind of take care. You have do that stuff. You know, it was fun to write that book. You know.
The great thing about it that I found was that he wasn't he wasn't totally gone, and the house that looked like it was totally a shambles and it was just all this junk was value in there, and it was just a matter of him bringing it back to his mind.
You know, it's true. Like, you know, I mean, and a lot of times, you know, when my mother was going through dementia, you know, I was talking to the people who were trying to help me, you know, and there was, but you know, they were trying to help me say, well, you know, you need to put your mother in a home. And I said, well, my mother doesn't want to be in a home. She wants to be in her house, you know. And so they said, but she doesn't know what she wants. I said, no, every time I ask her, she says, I don't want to do that, you know. And they said, but she doesn't know, you know, what she's thinking. And I go, no, she does know. She's having a little more trouble getting there than she used to, but she knows. And when I was 2 years old, she saved my life every single day, right? Every day your mother's going to save your life. Every day you're going to stick your finger in that plug, you know, eat that rat poison, you know, whatever it is, you know. How did he find the rat poison? You know, but you know, like every day, it's you have that, and that's, you know, and that became the thing, because, you know, I was thinking about my mother when I was writing, I was thinking about my mother, my father's already dead. But anyway, any other notions? Thought? Yes?
You know, you may not have that much time, but I'm just curious, like, you get invited often to speak to schools in New York, or like I'm thinking high schools in particular, or elsewhere, maybe on the one hand as a writer, on the other hand as a sort of social commentary.
Well, I just wrote a children's book, so they'll probably invite me to go in a children's book. But, you know, people know that I've written, you know, Killing Johnny Fry, so they don't invite me into school. Yes?
I stuck ahead and I actually finished, but I was amazed. It was interesting. Coming up with the aspect of this police officer fighting police officers. To me, that was like from being a black man and a police officer to having to go against what he at one point called himself, that he was so blue that he knew that he was crossing lines, and I was just fascinated. I just want to say that was amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. You know, it was an interesting, like, kind of challenge. You know, and there's another like challenge like I have, because, you know, I'm like allergic to doing research. You know, I break out in hives when I think about doing research, and so I don't. You know, but of course, you know, when you start talking about the police, you know, but it was so great. I was being interviewed by this woman on NPR, and at one point, you know, she didn't tell me for a long time, but at one point she said, well, you know, 5 people in my family are police officers. And I went, oh, shit. I'm in trouble here. And she said, but, you know, I think all of them would agree with what you say about who they were and what they're doing and where he's going, you know, and it's like, and it made me very happy, you know, that, you know, because I don't dislike the police. I know when I get in trouble, I call the police, but, you know, but they still scare me when I see them behind me, you know. It's because, you know, so it's like you know, one of those things. Yes?
You don't do research, which is interesting. Where is your characters a bit of you, or people that are just in your life?
Well, you know,
that you've met, maybe someone in your family, or...
No. I mean...
Your personas have to come from somewhere.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. You know, it's like, but, you know, it's like, you know, like if you know, you have like you know, like there are different kinds of, you know, intelligence. One of them is physical, like, you know, like there are certain people, like if they're playing basketball and they're doing this, and there's all these people here, and they look over here, those people keep moving in the back of their head, and they know where they all are, even before they knew where they're going to go, right? Now they do that, but if you ask that guy, I said, well, how do you know that? You're like, I don't know, I just know that. You know what I'm saying? It's like I can't explain. I know that I don't write biographies of my characters. They aren't people that I know. I never write about directly about people I know. Though my experience has to inform when I write. You know, like, but I mean, it's like, you know, because there's a thing, you know, that I always try to tell people. I think it's true about all art, but it's certainly true about novels. They're bigger than your head. You can't. If you can contain a novel in your head, then it's not a novel. Like, it's so you have to be free. You know, I mean, I'm sure Picasso could explain to you how he did those paintings, but he don't know.
So do you leave it up to us as the reader?
Well, I mean, if you like the book, you like the book. If you don't like the book, you don't like the book. If you think you know where it came from, fine. You know, that's fine. You know, I mean,
I've seen 3 interpretations of your character Mouse. Once in film and 2 in plays. I don't know if you ever saw your book in plays.
it was in Chicago. They did
Yes.
play.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah, they did
I didn't see it, but I know they did it. Yeah.
Yes, they did, which is where I'm from. And I found that interesting. So I was just wondering, because that's their interpretation.
Yeah.
You know, some director or whatever.
Well, that's fine with me.
Well, okay. So you didn't see the one in Chicago. I was just wondering, are you?
I love Don
Are you
Cheadle's.
happy?
I
Well,
love Don Cheadle's interpretation.
He had a great interpretation. The guy the 2 actors I saw in Chicago, not so much.
Well, that's okay.
But, yeah, which is okay.
That's all right. I mean, because there's always nothing's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, everybody's going, but they're faster than you thought they were.
Yeah.
It's like it's okay. Man, I don't mind that. Yes.
So now that you've started this, are you thinking of developing this character into more?
I think it probably depends on if someone wants to pay me for it. Honestly, I think that matters more than anything else, really. Like about this, one day I might decide to write more about this character, but like right now I probably wouldn't unless somebody says they're going to pay me to write another one.
So does that mean we're going to get more?
I have a book coming out in September called John Woman. It is not a mystery, and it's about a deconstructionist historian. So, what you can expect is that. Like, I'm not that writer. Well, okay, so I guess he's going back to Easy Rollins. So I said, or Leonid Miguel. It's like. No, I'm doing what I do. It's just like, one of the things is that, like, people say, well, but easy is where you make money. And I said, well, that's true. I said, but if I wanted to get rich, I'd be in real estate, not in novels. It's, yes.
How do you write, like, on a daily basis, a certain amount of time in a particular place, or could you write for 10 or 12 hours a day?
Oh my God, no. I was just in a writer's room, like a television writer's room, doing this thing I'm working on John Singleton's Snowfall, and I was like in this writer's room, and with 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, sitting around a table with 8 people talking about stuff. It drove me crazy. I hated it so much. I was just like, I learned all this stuff, so it was really good, but I'm going, oh my God, I can't stand it. It's like, it's so awful, Now, I write every day, 365 days a year, in the morning for 2 to 3 hours. Every day, 365 days a year, 2 to 3 hours. Doing that since I was 38, I'm now 66. I've published 54 books. And I write faster all the time, except John Woman, that took me 20 years. But other than that, it's like, there are other, I just do, You know, writing every day is kind of like psychoanalysis. You go deeper and deeper into your unconscious. The morning you wake up, there's things there that you didn't know they were going to be there. If you don't write for a day or 2 days or 3 days, you're going to drift far away from the dream of whatever you're writing. You know, that thing about being bigger than your head. Everything that's outside your head is the unconscious, and things come up from there. I can't tell you what they are, but I know that they come up. Yes.
Are you gonna do the National Book Club conference again?
You know, I did. You know, I in Georgia, right, in Atlanta. You know, like that's one of my big things. Like when Curtis started that, he called me and we didn't know each other, but he called me and he said, you know, I'm starting this thing. I need a name to come in. So will you do it? And I did. And he gave me this award, and kind of made up this award. But after that, they named the award after me, which is like so cool. I really love it. But you know, they haven't asked me this year. You know, so like, you know, I mean, of course I'll go, but I don't know, you know, I don't know when. You know, they're doing great. You know, they're having fun. You know, doing their thing. You know. Yes.
We were talking in the back about jazz and blues and all that kind of thing, and the gentleman here brought up Miles Davis, and music, you know, is so important, or is so present in your work. You know, I'm thinking of R.L.'s Dream, and you know, you write about you know, the Los Angeles of Central Avenue and that whole scene, and you know, it's more. I know it's a huge question, but can you talk about music in your work and how important it is, and as a second question, equally vague,
Okay.
can you
good.
give a little pitch to Chester Himes, who we were talking about a little bit?
Well, you know, I've been told, and I kind of believe that Devil in a Blues Dress is a jazz novel. It has a jazz beat to it. It has a jazz sensibility to it. It's not even like that it talks about music, but that it in a way is musical. And it was funny because when I first got told that, I said, really? Because I didn't mean to do that. Again, answering your question, I didn't mean to do that. But then when I look at it nowadays, I go, yeah, you know, it kind of is. You know, because it's because of, you know, all those, you know, black people migrating out of the South into Los Angeles, having all these dreams. It's kind of creating yourself in a way that's not all set out for you, right? It's a way you're not reading the notes. You know, they're coming to you in another way. So I agree with that. And just the thing about Chester, I mean, really, you know, Chester Himes, you know, like there's James Baldwin, there's Ralph Ellison, there's Richard Wright. At the very tail end of his career, Langston Hughes, you know, there's Zora Neale Hurston. There's, what's that woman's name, the playwright? But anyway, like there are all these people, you know, and of all those people, I think the greatest writer is Chester Himes. I don't think there's any question about it. Word for word, there's no question about it. But I think even deeper, his courage as a writer, saying things about himself that nobody said back then. You know, like his homosexual experiences in prison, and his understanding of himself, his understanding of blackness, and of course, you know, in understanding that, he's made enemies. You know, Ralph Ellison, you know, who was the enemy of any other black writer who existed. That's a fact. You know, wrote one novel, which is a good novel. It's not a great novel, but it's a good novel. And but he was able to make a career out of that because, you know, what it was doing was kind of in a way showing black life to white people. You know, so he's given a window for the white people to look in on black life. Chester Himes is creating a back door for black people to get out of that life. You know, he's saying, baby, we can get out of here. You know, because they're going to get you in here. They're going to burn down your house. You know, and I just kind of, I love him, and I understand his failure. I mean, you know, financially he's a failure in his life. And he is because nobody's going to support telling the truth about what America is. America based on the slaughter of the Indian and the enslavement of black people. Black people built America, and the Indians paid for it with their blood. You know, and that's a fact, and that's Chester Himes, and nobody's gonna pay attention to that.
Were those Harlem domestic novels important to you when you were coming up?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I just, yeah. Yep. With other authors? No.
No.
I mean, it would be so, I like it when other people write books. But, like that idea, like sitting in that writer's room, us all writing together, God, it's so awful. It's the only reason that you sit in there, they say it's as bad as making french fries at McDonald's, only they can pay you 35 times as much, You say, really? How many $100? But it's the only reason I do it. It's like, I mean, maybe it's not the only reason. Yes?
So, Easy Rollins is probably one of my all-time favorite fictional characters, and I wouldn't presume to think that I know what the experience was like being black back then, but I have to tell you something I've always wanted to say. I so appreciate the window you gave me into that. I would never have understood any of it without you. It was just such a literary treat. Are there any more Easy Rollins stories?
Oh, no, there are, yeah. I even have one outline. I'm supposed to write it for Doubleday. I just haven't gotten around to it. Right now, I'm working on doing a musical of Devil in a Blue Dress with Liesl Tommy and Issa Davis. These two people I'm working with. And so I don't want to write the next Easy Rollins until we've figured out where that goes. But yeah, I'm going to write more Easy and Socrates and Leonid and all those people. I'm going to write more, but not right now. Yes.
Do you write your own titles, or do your publishers have influence in the titles of your?
The only title that they've ever had influence on is this last one, Down the River Unto the Sea.
And what is the symbolism behind the title?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, I don't know about anyone else, but the Schoolhouse Rock song comes to my head.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, but I
it never did to me, but I mean, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
My original title was Detective Heal Thyself. And, I know what that title means.
Yeah.
I don't really know what this one means. I made up this title, but they didn't want my title. And I kind of backed into doing it, so I kind of had to do what they said. I wouldn't do it again.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't do it again. I'm like from now on, I'm going to say, listen, if I can't put a title on my book, then you probably shouldn't be publishing it.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm stuck with that, so it's okay. Listen, I like the title. I mean, it has a kind of music to it that makes me happy.
Okay.
It's just I don't know what it means. Yes.
What inspired you to start writing? Was it when you were a child that you enjoyed reading? As a child, who were your favorite authors?
All those questions are such good questions. Like how did I start writing becomes really interesting because I didn't start writing till I was 34, 35. Didn't start. I mean, it's not like I was and then I became a writer. I said at 35, I said I want to be a writer, and I started writing. So that's one thing. It's a really interesting thing about influence, because that's the question you're asking about. I like reading. I don't consider reading and writing the same things. There are a lot of the master of the novel in the Western tradition is Homer, and Homer is both blind and illiterate. So he's considered the greatest, and he couldn't read, and didn't know, and never knew how to read. But the most interesting thing is influence, and I urge you to go to other readings and ask writers who influenced them, and what they're going to say to you is that they're going to lie. I was trying to think of a better way to say it, but I couldn't. They're just going to lie to you. Because, for instance, if you ask a young black woman, who influenced you? First, she's going to say Phyllis Wheatley because you don't know who she is, and then she's going to say Zora Neale Hurston because you do know who she is, and then they're going to say Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, Terry McMillan, Gloria Naylor, Octavia Butler, Bigman Now, Edwidge Danticat, Zadie Smith, and then some younger writers even. But they're going to say that because they want you to believe that they think of their writing in relation to these, great writers. And by the by, those great writers, all those great writers, they do it too. But the real thing is, it wasn't even a writer. It was Nancy Drew, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're 8 years old and you're reading Nancy Drew, and you're going, oh, wow, this is so great. And you're 8, so your whole heart and soul goes into the writing. Your imagination becomes what you're reading. And that's the thing that influenced you. If an 8-year-old girl read Beloved, she would have to kill either herself or her mother. She'd be there, Mom, I see on the page of the book his mother is killing her children. And it seems like it's okay. And it's like, I don't like that. So, for me, reading comic books had a big influence on me. My father, who was an extraordinary storyteller, had a big influence on me. Me telling stories to other people and having them listen to them had a big influence on me. Those are the things, because I think it's the more simple things, because it's what you love. A lot of people write this, I have an important story to tell. Well, okay, fine. But if you don't love writing, you're not going to tell an important story, right? And if you don't love the experience of that, and so that's, so those are the answers to all your questions. And I know they're all a little off from where you asked them, but it is great to know that you can become a writer at any time. You can't become a basketball player at any time. But you can become a writer, when you're old. A lot of people say being 35 was old. And let me tell you, now that I'm 66, it's not old, 35. But it's that coming to writing, has to be like that inner passion, which is the reason I don't write with other people, because it's like, I'm going to say exactly what I want to say, and that's what's going to happen. If somebody says something I don't like, Yes.
Can you tell us the title that you would have rather the book been, or?
Oh no, Detective Heal Thyself. Detective Heal Thyself. That definitely was the title I like. Yes, absolutely. What?
Oh, thank you, sir.
I'm sorry. Let me go look at that nice group of people over there.
Thank you, everybody. Easy Rollins is one of my favorite characters that you have. He's one of my favorites. And I love the way that he has all these other characters who he gets favorites from, his own favorites, orbit around him. One of my other favorites that you introduced was Fearless Jones. Mm-hmm. Had you ever thought to have a Fearless Jones book where Easy Rollins is like a secondary character and other characters